You know what? You guys should fire me and take over the show yourself.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, but who's going to do all the talking?
My master plan. You could take over for that.
All right, are we live?
We are now. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we videoing?
We are videoing. Yes.
Yep. Oh God, I should have done my hair.
That link out.
I did mine.
I was gonna say.
I put on a hat and you know, I put on a hat and I put some wax on the beard so it just goes one direction.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, it wings out.
I am particularly smitten by Denise's lipstick, though. I have to admit.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always a good look.
It's from a cosmetics company called Necromancy Cosmetica.
I never would have guessed that they would have had a name like that.
Yeah,
that is a distinct late stage frostbite purple that you're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That is good. And I assume you have the chat under control.
So people can chat either through the show's Facebook page or on YouTube. So we check into it once in a while. Mm-hmm. But in terms of someone being able to pop in here and be vulgar, that's all been taken.
Yeah, no, we ain't doing that no more. I was more.
Yeah, no.
I just noticed the way Denise has her focus. You know, it's like, all right, I'm sure Norm has started with the gifts already. So, you know.
The new version makes gifts a bit more difficult.
And yet.
Oh. Much like dinosaurs on Jurassic Park, Norm will find a way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, hello and welcome to issue 557 of Geek in the City Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Duran.
I'm one of your other hosts, Mina Rita.
I'm your other host, Cable Hashitani.
I'm the guest, Greg Rucka.
Hey, Greg, how's it going?
I'm okay. How are you guys?
You've had a week.
I have had a week.
Yeah, it's.
I'm not going to help you there.
I know.
I have had a week.
I'm trying to think about, like we have you on the show all the time, and it's wonderful. And I hear you on other shows, and
I'm reasonably okay. It's not as good as here, though.
Right? Yeah.
Mimi runs a close second, but
don't say that. Mimi kick our asses. All of us.
Yes.
Both physically and in terms of how professionally she runs her show.
Well. But she's also Mimi, which means like she is gracious as an angel in flight. So, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, I think what I meant was that you are very passionate about many things, and the world is kind of so much a dumpster fire right now that it's hard. But for the last week, just from me kind of following whatever, you have seemed genuinely happy, and it's actually kind of nice to see.
How can you not? How can I not be right now? It would take.
That's what I. Yeah, and it's nice.
I mean, I've got some really thick cynicism walls, and they're not even. I'm not because that's not true. I'm not cynical. Let's just say the defenses are very, very entrenched and much thicker than you would think.
You were reasonably jaded, I think.
But
I've never thought of you as a cynic.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I don't think I'm jaded. I think I'm realistic, which I suppose proves the point. But
only a jaded person would say that.
Yep.
But yeah, man, I mean, something like I woke up, what was it, Saturday morning? And I had a text from Gina, right? Gina Prince Bythewood, who's the director of the movie. And literally the text said, "Good morning, writer of the #1 movie in 79 countries," or something like that. And it was like, and you go, yeah, that's awesome. And then, of course, me being me, I immediately go, of course, it's not like there's a whole lot else out right now. I mean, you got to immediately be like, it is awesome, and I want to embrace it, and I am incredibly grateful. But the necessary reality check is an ongoing thing. You know what I mean? It's like, it's great. People are seeing it, and it is really wonderful how people are responding. I am also well aware that we released into a market without a whole lot of competition.
Well, I mean, Sure, but like, don't discredit the work with that. Don't discredit what you and Leandro have created and the whole cast and crew created.
I'm not. I'm genuinely not.
I actually have a counterpoint to this.
Same.
You also released it into a market where everything is available and everyone is seeking out comfort food in their entertainment.
Yeah.
And Old Guard is #1 in 79 countries and it's brand new.
Yeah. No, I absolutely take what you're saying, Cable, and I think it's important. Look, we are benefiting from the moment in both the best ways and also because of the worst things in the moment.
Yeah.
It is. Sorry, I am being buzzed by a gnat or something. Oh no, Greg is going into DTs. And apparently getting emails at the same time. We need to hit do not disturb. Yeah, I mean, look, we did release. I think it is #1, just empirically, right? I think it's a good movie. Okay, I think it is a good movie.
It is objectively a good movie.
That's what I mean, right? I think, in as much as I have objectivity about it, it does what you want. You are entertained by it, and it gives you more. It's got some real heart. It gives you some things to think about. It comes at a moment where I think some of the core ideas are really resonant. And it comes at a moment when the representation implicit in the movie and in the text is not only welcomed, it has been craved, and people are genuinely thirsty for it. I mean, they've really needed this nourishment. It is escapist fare at a time when we all want to escape.
Yeah, so much so.
And yet its escapism is not a irresponsible one. The escapism in the end, and I've said this elsewhere, but I think it is apt. In a moment of time where my decision to wear a face mask in public can save a life, not just in Portland, but in, Colombia, right? We do not know the extent and ramifications of the decisions we make and the acts we make for good. The choices that we make, however big or small, have impact.
Yeah.
And if we only make good choices expecting to see the results of those choices, then aside from, again, to use the good place sort of seeking moral desert definition, it's fallacious. You're never going to get it. We have to move through the world and treat people and interact with one another not knowing the benefits. We need to be good because it is right to do.
For the sake of good, not because of the moral reward.
Exactly. Not because we're going to get something at the end of the day. And the act of doing that is an act of supreme faith. It is a belief that, yes, what you do every day matters and will matter in lives you will never encounter and in ways you will never see, but it does matter. And I feel that at the end of the film in particular, that is beautifully evidenced. And, all other things being equal about the movie, carrying that forward in a film that is as inclusive as this movie is certainly saying something to everybody in the world. I mean, this is the way we can be. And also acknowledging it's not easy at times. And right now is one of those times when it sure as hell ain't easy. So,
right. And that reminds me, like, one of my favorite, this movie has a lot of lines that have stuck with me. And I'm sure we'll get to the armored car scene sometime in the show tonight. But there's that part.
What scene are you referring to, Eric?
But But there's a part where she asks, she asks Nikki, are you good guys or bad guys?
Yeah, no,
No, not yeah. And
she asked the tailor, "You good guys or bad guys?" And Joe says, "Depends on the century."
Right, and I like that they also acknowledge. I mean, there's some other things there, but I also like it. I feel like in that line they acknowledge it. Like at the time, it was the choice that I felt was right.
We hit an interesting,
and then history will decide.
We hit an interesting thing. When you hit the credits, I learned a new term. They're called the before the mains, is that sequence that you get when the movie ends and the camera is moving along the sociogram and you're getting all the close-ups. And here's a little, you guys may know this, some may not. A lot of the sociogram was practical. It was on set and there were pieces on it. But a lot of the sociogram was also VFX. There were squares that were done in like gray or in green. And so digital assets could be dropped in, right? And when they were preparing the Before the Mains, after the film had locked, Gina, kept coming back to me and saying, so we're looking at these, and can you take a look at what we've put together? And can you give us some ideas of historical moments and so on? And one of the things I'm proud of is that we were really good about our research. There's a detail that I only found out yesterday from a friend of mine, for instance, that when this is jumping ahead to the armored car. Actually, I'll hold it until then. Remind me. But one of the problems was they were like, well, what were the conflicts they could have been involved in? And and there's always a push when they ask that to be like, they want to be on the right side. And it's like, guys, they're wars. There are very few wars where you can definitively say, this was the right side to be on.
Right.
Right. And so you find yourself, it's not simply going, I need a battle from 1897. It's like, oh, I have a list of like 17 things it could be. I have to research these to answer in canon, which side did they fight on? What were they doing there? Right. So for instance, in one of the initial passes, you could see Nikki and Andy and Joe in the crowd for MLK's I Have a Dream speech, the speech on the mall. And I kind of flagged it and I was like, I don't think we want to use that, because the implication there is that they were tied so closely with King, they failed to protect him when he was assassinated.
Right.
Right. And I mean, this is sort of the stuff you start thinking about. So, Gina, Gina's like, well, how about Selma? I was like, that's perfect. Like, they absolutely would have marched as Selma. You know what I mean? So it is trying to find this very weird place where in some cases there is a moral high ground that they would have taken. And in other places, it's like they thought they were doing the right thing. They were just trying to minimize the damage.
Right.
So
that would almost be like if there was an image of them, in Vietnam during that conflict.
Yeah.
What side do you put them on? I mean, the Americans were like, well, clearly they're on our side. I'm like, well, would they be?
Yeah. It's like, well, maybe they're just trying to make sure people aren't dying.
Yeah. Right.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
To that end a little bit, kind of a extra nerdy question, especially for this show. Wait. This question is even more nerdy than the standard nerdy of this show. Yeah. Has there ever been a desire, either just for fun in your head or a suggestion at one time with the Netflix studio that it's clearly doing well? I think we're going to get to part 2. But has there ever been, even in your own head, just every once in a while, or maybe chatting with Leandro of like, hey, what if we did an entire little flashback miniseries? So the old guard, and we place it in here. I have fun.
I have thought about it, but I'm not sure it would work as a comic. I think if if some bright boy at Netflix says, hey, you know what we could do is we could do a bunch of like 8-minute or 15-minute or 30-minute, the old guard in, Eureka in 1845.
Sure. Yeah.
You can do that. And those would be fun. But I think trying to sustain that as a mini, certain outcomes, it kills the jeopardy.
Sure.
Right? You are riding more the novelty and the glee of going, oh, we get to now be in this moment, in that quantum leapy way.
Yeah. Oh, we get to put her in the Battle of Trafalgar. That's gonna be fun. We've never seen her on a boat yet.
That's a really good point. If you focus on the essentially flashback periods, it's not the same story anymore. Now it's like a almost a time traveling or like a period piece, which this is not meant to be. But I do want to point out that I was actually really disappointed at how fewer number of flashbacks there were in the film, because
that's called budget.
And they add so much context to the characters, so that was a little bit of a bummer.
I will say that, and you're speaking clearly as somebody who knows the graphic novel. One of the things that I've found interesting is that apparently some of the social media response has been, I would have liked to have seen more flashbacks. And one of the things we've been talking about in the eventuality of there being a sequel is actually being able to show some of these things, being able to show, that, like when I wrote the screenplay, you got to see Booker's death. When I wrote the screenplay, you got to see Nikki and Joe meeting. Those had been written and were in it. Mm-hmm. It was really only Andy who didn't have a lot of flashbacks. And then, because of the needs of the production and the needs of budget, it was like, well, we're going to have to remove these things. And I'll say that the brief Booker one that you see almost didn't make it. And I guess this is a preview for those here. There's going to be a new social media released asset tomorrow. And it's a cool little sort of featurette, and you'll see some more material that didn't make the movie in it. There's more stuff with Quinn and Lycon in that.
Interesting.
But yeah, there was a lot more Quinn and Lycon stuff that had been shot and just didn't make the cut.
I didn't. You said like that, just that brief Booker flashback, and he has a couple pages to share his sort of origin story, so to speak. Well, that's exciting. Can you say what social media outlet that's going to be on?
Well, I suspect it's going to drop on all of them because it is Netflix. So if you are near a device that gets the Facebooking or the tweeting or the Instagramming or the tumbling or whatever, I suspect it'll be out by midday tomorrow, I believe. Okay. And it's fun. It's a fun little bit. And one of the things I like about it is it has an artifact feel to it, in the same way that this sociogram places it in the real world, right? These things really happened. Look at these people in these moments. This is a fun little thing. So I was really tickled to get to be even a small part of it. The marketing stuff, and the people on the marketing have just done a tremendous job, and I am very impressed. Given again, the moment we're in, there are a lot of ways you could have misstepped, and put out the wrong thing at the wrong time, or said the wrong thing at the wrong time, really turned people off. And I think that I've been very impressed with how responsible Netflix has been about this, honestly.
I don't think I follow Netflix on Instagram, and I still saw sponsored ads for the Old Guard that were not just reposts from your Instagram. Yeah. So they were doing a good job. They were definitely finding their target market and sending the stuff to it.
Very cool.
I would have just
Go ahead, Bean.
Oh, so I would have said that, like, I'm sure it helps that, like, the core content is of such a quality, of a nature that it's hard to misstep. Like, you'd have to go out of your way to do or something that might accidentally even be offensive or just insensitive. If it's
we
not
are talking about Hollywood, right? I mean, it's like, you know, the ability to trip over one's feet is well documented. But yeah, I've been, we all hear all the Hollywood horror stories, and God knows I have Hollywood horror stories. I don't have any about this.
Good.
I mean, there's just everybody involved in this has been tremendous. And I think, honestly, and that's not to say it's been smooth. It hasn't. There have been arguments. There's been conflict, I mean, do we do this? Is this better? Is this the right cut? Is this the right song? Is this just, all of these things have been engaged and fought over. And I mean fought over because people believe passionately about what they think works. But the thing that has been genuinely remarkable, and perhaps even more remarkable given the nature of Hollywood, is that the arguments have always been about making the work the best the work can be. They have been remarkably devoid of ego, at least as far as I've been aware. And that's a remarkable thing. So, yeah.
I also really noticed, and this was pretty refreshing as someone who enjoys creating and reading comics, that Netflix really turned into the fact that this was a comic book first.
Yeah.
In more than just saying based on the graphic novel. And a lot of times it'd be based on the Image Comics novel, or, the other problem that happens a lot is based on the novel by Greg Rucka, and they wouldn't bring up Leandro.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying Netflix did it, but as a rule, studios bring up the writer, never the artist.
Yeah. And Leandro's been
do that.
Yeah, Leandro's been present throughout this. They've never pretended that there wasn't a comic. And I am, the only detriment I think that comes out of that is that for a large portion of the audience that is not us, right, is not not us geeks here in this city.
Sure.
Comic means superhero, and so it was being called a superhero movie.
Right.
And I think, I personally don't think it is. No. And I think for people who didn't know the material, some of them, if they came to it expecting a superhero movie, might well have been disappointed because nobody was in costume flying around punching anybody.
Right. I mean, it's superhero in that they can't die, I guess. But
but I don't think that makes it superhero.
No, it doesn't.
I think that makes it fantasy. I think it makes it fairy tale, and that's what this has always been. I mean, I'm wearing the damn shirt, and on the back it says this is a fairy tale of blood and bullets. And that has always been what we've called it. And I can't even, I can't lay that on Netflix. That's on a popular culture that has been educated in particular by movies from Disney Marvel, but also from movies from, Warner Brother DC to go, comic, then superhero.
Yeah. I think, God, it's been over like a decade, I think, since Cable. Cable's the first person I remember saying this publicly, saying comics are a format, not a genre. Mm-hmm. So quit doing that.
Yep.
I like to remind people that, like, when they see
we're a medium.
They're a medium, mm-hmm. Yeah. Like when you see like Road to Perdition or Ghost World, those are comic book movies.
You got it.
So, it's one of the most flexible mediums in terms of storytelling out there. So that's probably why I enjoy it so much.
It is one of the reasons why comics are wonderful. You can do almost anything with them.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to double back real quick. Was there a lot of back and forth, or and if you feel free to not divulge if you don't feel comfortable, but even contention with like the screenplay that you wanted to put down versus what Netflix wanted, and versus what the final copy was?
No. I mean, so I've said this a couple other places. You always hear, oh, they went back and they did reshoots, or they were doing rewrites on the set.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And anybody who's ever engaged in any creative endeavor knows that you are tweaking and tightening and polishing and revising and all the way up into the last possible moment. That is the nature of creating anything, right? Especially anything artistic, anything that's going to be subjective. You are constantly at work on it. So, there were times in particular on set where it was like, well, the situation has changed here. We have to do this a different way. How can we make this work? How are we going to rewrite this to make it work? This is asking, Charlize was very good about, looking at the script and being like, I don't need this. I need this, right? And I could go back and be like, okay, well, then we can cut these lines and I can put that into this line, just a sentence here. Does that work? And that's not, to me, contentious, right? That's, even when somebody says, no, that doesn't work, that's not being contentious. That's part of the process, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the nature of the collaboration. So I never really felt, certainly once I was on the production, that it just wasn't ever adversarial.
Right. I guess a better way of putting it would be like, do you feel like the final product is the story you wanted to tell, or do you feel like you compromised a lot of things?
No. And absolutely, I laid that on Gina more than anybody else, because, the director's privilege is when they come onto a property, there's a reason writers get fired. We are socks. And then they go, I have a friend who's a screenwriter. I'm going to hire them to rewrite this the way I wanted.
I like their socks on me.
The moment Gina and I met, she had the graphic novel. The first words out of her mouth after, hi, nice to meet you, I love this, was, why is this not in the screenplay? Why is this not in the screenplay? And on multiple occasions, and she's made no secret about it, it mattered to her to preserve, as she put it, the heart and soul of the material. And I think for Charlize as well, because my understanding is that there was a script, but she encountered the graphic novel before reading the script. And for her, that was very much the same thing as well. It was this core we want to preserve. Mm-hmm. So yeah, right now I'm a unicorn. Right now I'm a unicorn. They made.
I heard you mention that on the Fat Man Beyond when Mark Bernardin was asking you, and I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I know this doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And it certainly doesn't happen to the guy who wrote the source material and then did the adaptation. Right.
Right.
This is. This is 25 years of hard work paying off, I guess, or, we're closer to 30, right? This is maybe the dues, maybe it's luck, maybe it was the right place, right time, maybe it's all of it. But
collaborative team.
It is a genuine privilege to be able to say I am proud of this movie and really mean it. It's not going out there and being like, yeah, Netflix, yeah. This is like, people don't have to like it. If people don't like it, that's absolutely, I'm not going to argue with them about it. But I get to look at it and with a full voice say, I am proud of this movie that I helped make.
Right.
I think it is good, and I think it is worthy, and I actually think it is not only good and worthy, I think it's better than a lot of other stuff out there.
It is. There's actually, I don't think it was an official Netflix poll, but it was something that was Netflix adjacent, I guess. And it was, which is your favorite, original Netflix action film right now? And it was Extraction and The Old Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And Extraction had its moments, most of which because, Chris Hemsworth is just...
Chris Hemsworth, yeah.
He's Chris Hemsworth, and when he's on screen, even when he's being brooding, you're like, oh, look at Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
Look, it's Thor's brooding. But, not to add on more and more, but like The Old Guard was just blowing it out of the water.
Yeah.
And Extraction was fun.
Yeah.
But, the Old Guard has in between a lot of just fantastic action pieces that are just a joy on a visceral level to watch. There's a lot of legitimate heart and humanity there. Yeah. A sense of believability, considering it's about immortal characters.
Well, I was going to say, if you can essentially make Big Pharma the bad guy in your story and not have it come off as hokey or, I don't know, like a stereotype, a cliche, like if you can sell it and actually give it a sinister vibe, good job. Good fucking job. Big Pharma.
It's kind of low hanging. It's a little bit low hanging fruit.
A little bit.
But I think that means that it's also really easy to do a bad job of it. Like because it's low hanging fruit, you maybe don't try as hard. But no, you made a believable and sinister villain out of something that could have just been a trope.
Thank you.
I thought that the casting of Harry Melling as the head of the pharmaceutical company was particularly ingenious.
Yeah,
because it played on what he's done previously, and then he played the role in such a way that's like, oh no, I believe you 100%. I actually want to watch more things with him now. It's like,
he's fantastic. Have you seen him? Have you seen him in was it Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
I have not. He's in that?
Yeah, he's in one of the episodes and just is phenomenal. He is really wonderful. He's also just so sweet.
I like giving people who played villains in movies more like I like following what they're doing in their career more. They get shit on because fans have a hard time separating the actor from the part.
Yes.
Especially when they were kid actors and it's a ginormous thing. And he was definitely, he played a character that was a foil to the lead character that everybody loves.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, this will be some spoilery territory, but the scene when Merrick is fucking holding Andy's axe. First off, he's holding it all wrong.
Yeah.
Before him, he can't wield it. I mean, I knew he was gonna die. I didn't think he was gonna. Yeah. But when he's on the top of that fucking staircase, I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure that's going to end up in your head, and I can't wait. Look at you, like, looking at your mercenaries down there, and you're like, I'm going to join my men. You piece of shit.
But no, but at the same time, he's saying, like, how many more guys are coming?
Yeah,
he still doesn't feel ready, even with, like, the sickest weapon in the room.
It was funny, like, just for, like, all the other horrible things he does in that movie, my brain was like, how dare you touch that? You garbage human. You do not deserve that.
You are unworthy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a Thrawn holding the artifact of Harrison Dula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you put that down right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, tell me more about this. No, I'm going to just take it from you. And you're never going to know anything about it.
Yeah. No.
So... a question from the chat. And again, you may know, you may not know, and you may or may not be allowed to discuss it. But do you feel like because this was such a success, both in terms of like, ranking and popularity, as well as like the experience being so positive as a whole, do you feel like a sequel would be a bigger challenge?
If I am understanding the question, that the challenge of, look, anytime you have something that is apparently as well received as this is being received, you automatically have expectations if you say there is going to be a second. And you would be foolish not to acknowledge the expectations of a second, right? That you certainly don't want to do anything that tarnishes the memory of the thing that made people want the second in the first place. Where I am right now, I know what the second is. I know where it draws from the source material, and more importantly, I know where it diverges. And it diverges much more than the first one ever did. And I'm kind of excited about the potential opportunity to write it. As we've been saying, it's a collaborative process. So what it may ultimately look like versus what I imagine it looking like are going to be two different things. There's just no way they're not. But if we have half of the creative force behind a second one, as we did in the first, I actually am not terribly worried. I think anytime you make a sequel to anything, there is an element of we want the same thing again, but more.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases it works. Wick 1 to Wick 2 is a great sequel progression.
Not 2 to 3.
Well, and then you get into the problem of 2 to 3. Yeah. And the problem of 2 to 3 is that they forgot what they were. They forgot their story.
Yeah.
And they fell in love with their mythology. And look, the reason I think people are responding to the Old Guard is that all of the trappings on it are really cool and people dig them, and that's awesome. That's why they're there. But the heart of that story has merit. And when you exchange your heart for more sizzle, you can't eat sizzle. You have to cook some steak. So my biggest concern would be fighting the urge to turn too much into it. So for instance, Denise was saying, I would have liked to see flashbacks. I want flashbacks in a second. I want to be able to show some of the stuff we couldn't show. But we're going to have to pick and choose those very carefully because the story isn't taking place in the past. The story is going to be taking place in the moment of the story. So I'm aware of the pitfalls there, but I'm not intimidated at all by it. More fool me, maybe.
Well, and considering how the first one ends, there is definitely ample opportunity
you
for
think?
flashbacks. Just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to, I guess, spoiler alert.
Look, if people are listening to this and they haven't turned it off yet to go watch it, I think they're kind of in for it.
Yeah.
Anyway. Like they've had abundant opportunities to be like, maybe I should see the movie first.
Maybe
yes.
Yeah, they don't have the excuse of, well, I couldn't get out this weekend. Like, nobody could get out this weekend.
That's true. Yeah, there's no reason you could not. Well, I don't want to attack people's personal timelines.
People. I just will say that yes, I have referred in many an interview as that button scene is referred to in case of sequel break glass,
Right.
and Jen didn't realize how precise I was until we were watching it. I think the night it dropped, like at 2:30 in the morning, and when that sequence begins, the first thing that happens is Booker drops the bottle and it shatters. So it is quite literally, in case of sequel, break glass.
I did not pick up on that.
Yeah. Very subtle.
But so you talk about diverging from the original story, and you talk about how you already know what that sequel would be.
Yeah.
But what was the impetus for the major change with Andy's arc?
We have to decide whether or not we were going to just say we're spoiling or not, because otherwise we can't have the conversation. We're just talking around it.
You know what? If you're listening to the show right now and you haven't watched The Old Guard, you've got 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to spoiler territory.
There you are. we
we
will spoil every movie before it's time.
I felt like doing the aliens thing. You have 5 minutes to reach minimal safe distance.
Safe distance, yeah. The Andy losing her immortality makes her conflict manifest in a way that well, number one, if I had thought of it when I was doing the comic, I'd have done it in the comic. I didn't think of it. All right. So that's the first thing. The second is that it takes what the character is struggling with and it literally makes it manifest. She is now literally having to confront it. And then it solves one of the problems you have when you have a story about people who can't die, which is your jeopardy is somewhat limited.
Right.
Because you're not really worried they're going to die, because even though we know they can, it would be incredibly dissatisfying if, Booker got shot and, I guess that did it. He's not getting up again, right? If Booker doesn't come back in the rectory scene, right, if he really is in the chair dead, then it's not much of an immortality, right? The tension, you don't watch that sequence going, oh my God, he's really gone. You're watching that sequence, watching Andy having to deal with the fact that, oh my God, you've left, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, this could be your time.
Right.
I've lost another soldier.
But when he comes back, the audience doesn't go, oh, thank goodness. The audience goes, it's about time, you know.
Also, that scene's really kind of gross. Like, I'm usually not messed up with gore, but whoever did the effects and the sound effects on there, like, there's some sound in that one little scene. I was like,
that one?
Done.
It could have been worse. They could have stuck with the headshot.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Just nicely done.
They look, I think the Foley or the SFX for that, the one that gets me is Nile at the end. Just the bones popping back into place and the cracking of the cartilage and exactly that one hand. And
also, that's really good video effects. That usually looks really shitty.
Yeah. No, you watch that and you're like, ow. No, you can stop now.
Stop it.
I like the plane fight where her elbow goes back into her bone goes back into her arm.
Yeah, the open fracture becomes a closed one and you're like, oy. So, yeah.
Another divergence that I was really curious about was essentially the end of Merrick.
Yeah.
And I assume the change is simply because it's a little anticlimactic for the scene, for film.
Well, and we had actually done different versions of it. And there was not shot, but written. And honestly, it wasn't dramatic enough. You wanted a moment where the audience would be like, yeah. And it is a yeah moment because you get to do the fall with them. So you know how this is going to end. And there is, I think, that visceral glee of being like, oh, she's going to walk away from this one, and he's not. But I had done a version where Andy, where he is fleeing and they actually box him. Like he can't get away. And he sort of gets, finds himself, in an alley, and there's Andy, and she says 6,738, and he says what? And then she kills him. And as much as I like the line, it wasn't the right one. It was the end of Merrick that we get is much. It's much better cinematically. And also, I mean, look, from a writing standpoint, the movie is flawed in the sense that it has 3 endings. I mean, the movie literally ends 3 times, right? And most stories, when they do that, not a good job. But
only Return of the King gets away with it.
Right. But it works here because each ending is ending a specific element of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a version of the movie that ends with them simply getting in the car and driving away, right? It becomes a different movie when the next scene you get is now we have to deal with Booker, because that changes what the movie is about, right? All of a sudden, it was never about Merrick. It was always about the relationships here between these people.
Mm-hmm.
And then that proceeds into the Copley scene of the restoration, if not of faith, of a sense of purpose and meaning, which is the resolution of the Andy crisis. So, I mean, and all of them are there, but I remember doing that and literally giving it to Skydance and being like, guys, there are 3 endings here. One of them's got to go. And they're like, nope, need all 3. Need all 3. And it actually, I don't think, and the thing that I think is interesting about it, and I may not, no, I'm not the best judge on this, but to me, it doesn't drag. You don't hit Merrick's death and then start going, when is this thing over? You know, you want to stay with them.
You want the resolutions to the other arcs.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because they've, quote, killed the big bad doesn't mean the story of this moment is over.
And I think that that's effective in part because the story is not about the big bad.
No.
You know, it's not about him. It's just not.
I did think that were this a theatrical release, the final bit with Booker, that would have been a post-credit scene.
Yes.
Yeah. They'd have moved it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, without question.
and the reason it's written as a post-credit scene, and the reason it plays the way it does, and there were discussions about it, right? It's because Netflix, you can't do a post-credit scene on Netflix. You finish watching something and it immediately goes into the small box.
I mean, you can, but they'd have to make it the first time Netflix didn't do that. And people were like, what's going on?
Exactly. So,
or you have to be like what we did and select, no, I don't want a preview of the next thing. I want to watch the credits.
I am exactly. And then you get rewarded for doing that.
Yes.
But that's the way Netflix works. So it was, I mean, and I actually kind of liked the solution because it wasn't me. That was Gina, and that was I believe it was Gina and Terry, and Terry was the editor on the film who came up with the ... That
was good.
The ellipsis, and I dug that. The first time I got to see that, I was like, "Oh, that's nicely done. I like that." So, yeah.
And speaking of Booker's scenes and stuff, and I'm gonna bounce around with my thoughts and whatever. His initial betrayal, I'm fucking furious.
Yeah.
But what's impressive is within that same scene, like 2 minutes later, I actually feel bad for him.
Yeah. I
get it almost immediately. And in my head, I'm like, would I have done that? And I can't answer yes or no on that.
Yeah.
Even more
I
so
think
once
that's
they're
what
both once they're both strapped into the medical bay.
Yeah.
Well, and his first line when he gets in there is, "I killed her. I've killed her."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, it is genuinely gutting.
I wonder when they have that conversation where they decide what happens to him.
Yeah.
At the end, Niall wants to forgive him. I mean, there's even the line, clearly Joe and Nikki are like, no.
Yeah.
I kind of get the impression that Andy sides for them just to keep the peace, but like in her heart, she's like, no, I actually get why he did it.
Oh,
but it has to be dealt with in you can't mess up the ranks.
I will tell you exactly the way that plays out is that
awesome.
Niall wants to, he has learned his lesson. You need to forgive him. And Nikki is arguing for a certain amount of forgiveness. Mm-hmm. There has to be a penalty.
Mm-hmm. There has to be consequences for your actions.
Right.
Otherwise, we don't know that you really learned.
But I'm willing to be lenient. And Joe's like, screw that noise. He did wrong by us and he's got to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy's the one who, because if all other things being equal, and as much as she loves all of them, she's also the unit leader. And at the end of the day, it's like, no, he's got to pay a price. It doesn't matter whether I want him to or not. Empirically, he broke faith with us. There has to be a punishment, and he has to pay it, or else he can never come back in. Right? So, and what I find potentially interesting is that once the decision is made, it may not be the decision that Nikki wants, but he absolutely accepts that, no, you have to pay your penance now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I might have thought 20 years would have been fine, but it came out as 100, and that means 100 it is.
Right.
And it is interesting to me that, Joe is clear, Joe and Booker are shouting at each other when they're in the lab, but it's Booker is the last person looking, or Joe is the last person looking back when they leave Booker.
Yeah.
Right. They start at the stairs, and it's Booker and Joe have the match. They look back, and there's a nod sort of between them. Like they have achieved something. Yeah. Like in accepting this punishment, they can be friends again.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that's why there has to be a punishment.
Mm-hmm. So it's that thing, and like this happens and it happens in a lot of military-based stories. It wasn't that you went your own way that the organization disagrees with. It's that you broke the chain of command. Yeah. You broke the implicit trust that has been set in.
We are
by
a
soldiers
unit
for centuries.
Yeah, and we have to be able to rely upon each other, and that's what Andy's responding to. We have to be able to rely upon one another, and you broke faith.
Yeah.
You literally did not have our backs. Yeah, you didn't have our backs. So sorry. That's got to be paid for. There's a bill.
So speaking of, we're going to jump around again. We'll get back to let's get back to the armored car scene.
Yes.
Well, we haven't talked about it yet. So let's talk about the armored car.
Let's just jump right into it.
Let's talk about Joe and Nikki in the armored car.
Yeah, I know that you had mentioned in other interviews that you were adamant that scene from the comic was never to be removed from the movie. From the script, which is great. Was there ever once I can't imagine Gina ever pushing back on this. Was there anything from the studio ever? Or was it just like, no, we are all in on this? If
the studio ever pushed back, I never heard that the studio pushed back. I will tell you two things, and I find this funny. About the time I turned to the second draft, one of the executives at Skydance and I were having a conversation. I said, I'm a little surprised you guys have never given me any notes about that. And the executive in question looked at me and he said, honest to God, Greg, if that scene hadn't been in the screenplay, I would have wanted to know why and have demanded you put it back in.
Wow. That
was one of the things we were buying. And I said, well, that's great. I mean, I knew I liked you guys.
That's really good to hear, actually.
Well, yeah, so here's the funny part about that. So you get to a point in the production, right? Gina has done the edits. We're now, I've gotten to come down and watch the edit. We're talking about what to cut, how to improve it, how to, you're trying to get it down to a certain runtime. The same executive, we're sitting in an office after having watched the cut, and he sits there and he says, I'm getting a little concerned. I think maybe we have to talk about losing that scene. Because it's not, if the movie's about Andy and Niall, here's this scene that's not. And I just remember looking at him and being like, good luck with that. And that was as far as it happened. Yeah, right? There was never a serious discussion about it. It was quite literally him doing his job and looking at this work and going, is it everything? Is it doing what it needs to do? And you got to be able to ask the question. Right? You have to be able to ask the question. He wasn't asking the question going, here's my chance to get the scene I hate out. It was quite literally like, is this serving the movie? And clearly the final answer was absolutely. It absolutely serves the movie.
Yeah.
It is a fair question to ask. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was really funny that, the same guy who told me, no, God damn it, this needs to be there, was also the guy who could say, we really need to ask if it is the right choice.
Right. But he wasn't coming at it from like a personal thing. It was a truly production question.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the politics or fear of controversy or anything like that. It was simply going, is this a 2-minute sequence that hurts us rather than helps us?
Sure. There's a moment in that sequence.
Fascinating.
At the end, after Nikki and Joe kiss, after that moment.
Yeah, the beat before the
and
before all the toxic males go like, we have no idea how to respond to this.
Right, but there's one of them that I actually had this weird moment. I'm watching this, all these completely horrible toxic males, but there's one of them that goes, like for a split second, I thought, oh, you know what? They got through to one of them.
Yeah, that's right.
Like one of them went for all his bravado, and it was probably this actor. He read into. But for that one moment, this one guy went like, "Oh shit, that's kind of pretty."
I wish somebody would say that about me.
Right? Exactly. By the way, I want everyone to be able to hear that at least once in their life. That's one of the most fucking beautiful lines of dialogue ever.
Well, I am very, very fond of the way Marwan delivers just the start of it, which is, you're a child, an infant. God. And your mocking is thus infantile. And I just, at that point, you just kind of want to sort of sit up and be like, oh, here it comes. I don't know what's coming, but here it comes.
Yeah, when he
I found out yesterday, my friend Nunzio, my old, dear friend Nunzio, tells me that in the screenplay, when Joe is trying to wake up Nikki, the script read, Joe, parens, medieval Italian, close parens, Niccolo, wake up. My understanding, what Nuns tells me is, and apparently like the Italian audience loves this, is that Marwan was using an archaic Italian term for wake up. He was effectively, instead of saying wake up, it would be the equivalent of saying awaken. So he was using an Italian construction that apparently is not commonly used anymore at all. It's like 200 years old. And I love that was Marwan and Luca deciding that was how it was going to go, right? This wasn't all the lines. These were the lines in the script, medieval Italian. We didn't go ask somebody, now can you translate this? Right? They came up with that.
If I didn't think that they were two actors doing a role perfectly, I would think they are together. And not just for the fact that they both look sexy together. They look so comfortable around each other.
But that's because they love each other. I mean, and I'm not, and I don't mean Joe and Nikki. Luca and Marwan had no daylight between them on set. Like, I have a photo that Leandro took at Shepperton outside of the soundstage that was being used to shoot the interior of the armored car and the interior of the freight car, and I believe also the interior of the mine. We're all in this one soundstage, and it's in between setups, and they're both in their costumes. They're just kicking a soccer ball back and forth.
As Europeans do.
They, and talk about you never feel more like an ugly American than when you're standing in your multinational cast going, I speak English, and your co-creator and collaborator and artist is conversing with you in English, Marwan and Luca in Italian, and then whoever and Matthias in Portuguese. And I'm like,
is he Spanish or Portuguese, Leandro?
Leandro lives in Argentina. So,
okay.
But he lived in Barcelona for a while, and I mean, I'm sure he's got about 7 languages. And I'm sitting here going, I know a little French.
I can get by in Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, I know a little French, but yeah, I mean, like Luca and Marwan, they hung out. They each, I think one of them was staying in a hotel. One of them had an apartment. They would get together for dinner, and then they would stay up drinking, and then they would. So, and when I met Marwan, he was sending during production, he would send pieces of poetry that he had been reading. Like I would get an email from him saying, "Oh, I found this poem, and I think this is really a beautiful poem for Joe and Nikki." And
oh my God,
I mean,
can't take it, Greg. Stop.
No,
That's so romantic.
There was no hesitation, and no squeamishness, and none of this. I mean, they played these guys in love, and that was it. And they liked each other and liked playing these guys in love.
And there's two other scenes that really sell it. Nice. I mean, one of it is
the dinner table. The dinner table.
That's the Malta.
No. Malta happens when
Malta's
they're strapped to those beds.
For me, when they say this reminds me of Malta, and he goes, "What time?" And he goes, "He just smiles."
Yeah. Oh, that time in Malta.
No, for me, it's the moment when they're in bed together, and I think it is. I want to say it's Nikki who's clearly having a little nightmare. It's a quick little moment.
Well,
it's just he just holds him a little bit longer as he's kind of quivering from a nightmare. Yeah, that really hit me really hard.
Yeah, no, the benefit obviously of them embracing the parts the way they did, and genuinely loving each other's company is that I think you see them interacting like people who know each other really well and really intimately and really comfortably.
That's why I like that dinner table scene, because it's just a quick moment, but they're talking as a group, but they're communicating to each other silently from across the table, and it's so real and so natural. It really sells them like as a pretty early point in the movie. Yeah.
No, it's and excuse me, and you see it in their performance pretty early. If you have your gaydar at all switched on, you can see the attraction between these two men. So
do you know how many tweets that I've seen that from the gay community is like, "Oh my God, we have an action movie."
Yes, they do.
Oh, and the fan art that you've been sharing. How many of them promptly feature Nico and oh my God, now I'm blanking on his name.
Yeah, Nikki and Joe were obviously fan art favorites.
The kissing, sword stabbing. The
yes.
It's a good one.
That feels like a tarot deck waiting to happen.
Oh my God, Bean, yes. Oh my God, I want a tarot card of the lovers.
The tarot of the old guard. So
it's gonna happen now that you've said it.
Well, hopefully I'll see some of that. Somebody already red bubbled some stuff. It was like, come on, guys.
Yay, internet.
Yeah.
Wait, what's red bubbling?
You can put up it's one of those sites where you can put up your designs and sell it, and it doesn't matter that it's a trademarked thing.
Oh,
because they drop it away for hours.
You make money off of other people's IP.
Yeah. Right. But that's how you know you've made it, Greg, because other people are profiting off of it.
There you go. Yeah.
In case you weren't sure before.
Charming.
Want to jump over to Kiki Lane as Nile. I really enjoy watching her growth. It's really powerful, and it was there's a scene she has, and I'm not gonna bring up too much real life, but we had a small 4th of July gathering, and some of our friends are veterans, and one of our friends they were talking about fears, and one of my dear friends said, my biggest fear was that one day I would take a life. They drill it into you to be good with it. And he's like, I'm never going to be good with it. I don't think I ever would have been good with it. And he's like, I never did. He says, but that was my greatest fear. And then 24 hours later or whatever, I'm watching the Old Guard. And that's the first thing Niall says is she's like, I can't, they drill it into you. But when it happens, I fucking hate it. I can't do it. Don't ask me to do it ever again.
Yeah.
And watching her evolution, I felt was really powerful and was very honest. So how much where did that?
A lot of that is Gina.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Gina was very adamant about being honest to that experience and about the immense amount of work and the immense trauma that soldiers feel when they take a life, and about there being this, and it's the wrong phrase to use, that there is sort of a psychological sweet spot that you try to get to that places the act of killing in combat between murder and an inability to act, and that the experience is universally traumatic, and that if it isn't traumatic, there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. And the studies that have gone on to say, the Vietnam studies in particular, that were something like 78% of all rounds fired, were fired to miss.
Oh my God! I just heard that stat. Yeah.
Yeah, that soldiers would actually try to fire above. They didn't want to hit their targets. And it was very important to Gina to reflect that. And I gotta say, this is one of those things where you talk about, again, going back to the collaboration, I was never 100% sure about it, because my concern was always that if you spend too much time dwelling on what you are doing, you run the risk of taking the air out of the enjoyment. If Andy killing people in the church, all the soldiers who are coming after them, if the movie stops and says every one of these men had mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and children, and you are watching a very different movie. There's a reason why in the middle of the red circle sequence in John Wick, nobody stops to go, oh my God, I need to call my wife. Bang. Right? I mean, you don't, because if you do that, you are forcing the audience to not enjoy it. You are telling them, oh, no, we know you were having fun killing people. There's an argument to be made that this is one of the things people have been responding to in The Last of Us 2.
Oh, Jesus, I just started that game, damn it. I broke down.
There's a sequence that you will get to roughly midway through, where the game tells you that you are looking at the bodies of this other thing, but when you see them, my first thought was, oh my God, I did that.
Yeah.
Like literally, I am stacking bodies like cordwood now. And there are places that it's worthwhile to interrogate that, and there are places where you absolutely do not want to. And I think it shows what a deft damn touch Gina has, that she was able to thread that needle, because it is a very, very delicate dance.
Yeah. It's way too easy for it to become pandering and parody if you acknowledge the death.
Well, and the flip side is, it's really, there's a reason why movies don't bring it up, because it's a very hard thing to answer. If you bring it up, this is going to be a bad example. If you were going to have sexual assault in your story is about the sexual assault. It is not backstory for a character, right? Mm-hmm. If you are going to interrogate what it means to take a life, really interrogate it, it kind of demands a story.
That's the whole movie.
Not a moment, right? Mm-hmm. So the ability to navigate it so that it is a through line for Niall's journey, and one where Andy can address it. And I'm not sure Andy's response is satisfying. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't think that Andy's answer to Niall's crisis is a satisfying answer. What I think is the satisfying answer is the one that Niall herself reaches. Right. And I think And I think it is, and it is a moment that it's the moment with Copley before the elevator and then the elevator ride.
Right.
It isn't what Andy said to her as much as her decisions in that moment to take this on and to acknowledge that this is, in this moment, the only way to do this. This must be done, and I am the one to do it.
Right. I felt when Andy gave Niles the answer, it was half out of necessity, not out of true belief.
Yeah.
Because for as badass and jaded as Andy is, she's also, she's tired. For as much fun as it was to watch her just murder a fuck ton of mercenaries in that church, there was no pleasure in her face when she did it.
No, and there's a look on Charlize's face when she completes the last lunge in that first sequence, and she is, and she knows I am looking into the eyes of a guy who does not quite yet know he's dead.
Yeah.
And her expression,
and I've ruined this family.
Yeah. And her expression is, I'm not sure I would say traumatized, but it's fully cognizant of everything she has just done.
Yeah.
And
for having millennia of killing and death, she still feels every single one of them.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I know there were more questions, but they've
all gone quiet.
They fly by as the chat continues, and we get into these deep answers.
I was going to say they disappear in the sea of gifts.
Let me find one here.
Excuse me.
Oh, here we go. Here's a question, but it does start to go off topic now, if that's okay, if we're ready for that.
Never go off topic.
Question is, has Queen and Country picked up steam with the Scott-free productions?
Nothing has picked up steam right now. My understanding was as of 2 weeks ago, there were only 8 productions active in the United States. Ridley Scott is filming, or was filming, in Ireland when the pandemic shut down all production. So I am told that Queen and Country is the movie that he intends to shoot after he's finished the one that is currently stalled because of the pandemic. I have nothing to do with it. I did not write the screenplay. I am not involved in that production. So your guess is as good as mine. I do know that if it does happen, apparently it's going to be on Netflix. So apparently that's where I live now.
Well, so far so good.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a bad place to live.
No, that's not the worst place. Yeah. There's definitely worse options.
Oh, yes.
I don't know, but that's I don't have the insider knowledge to truly make that statement. So, now having been much more heavily involved in a film adaptation of something that you've worked on, do you feel like that's your preference, or do you think that you kind of would be more comfortable just kind of licensing out your works, but maybe being less involved in a film, or somewhere in the middle?
It's middle. There are plenty of things that I am more than happy to do. If somebody comes along and says this would be a great TV show, I'm perfectly happy to say, great, I'll take your check and have good luck with it. Having demonstrated to myself and to others that I can write in the medium and write reasonably competently in the medium, I feel better armed to say, no, you know what, this one I want to be involved in, this one I want to do the way I want. So, Lazarus remains the primary example of that. I don't want to see a Lazarus anything done without me. I I am perfectly happy to sit back on Stumptown or Black Magic because, when those were optioned or went into production, my discussion with my collaborators on it were pretty much universally, well, this is fine. It's going to be a different thing. Black Magic, for instance, when we were approached about an option, Nicola and I had a long talk about the fact that there is, the story we were telling was not one that anybody could know until we were done telling it. So if somebody comes along and says, well, we want to make a TV series out of it, you say, oh, okay, except you don't know what it is.
You've read 3 issues.
Yeah, you think it's Witch Cop, and it's not Witch Cop. But if you, and if you guys think you can make a Witch Cop show, or if you see something there that'll work, then by all means do it. Because Nick was very much like, I don't mind. We're doing our thing. So if somebody has a thing that this inspires them to do, I'm more than happy to take a check and let them do it. And I'm perfectly fine with that. Mm-hmm. So it becomes very project specific. It depends on what it is.
Is it just that you think with Lazarus because you have spent so much time in that world?
I don't think. Yeah.
Or is it because so many of the themes in Lazarus are so connected to the world right now that it needs to be handled correctly?
I don't think that it's less that. I mean, it's more that I know what that story is. I know things about the universe nobody else knows. If you are going to and if you are going to do Lazarus, I want it done right. Lazarus is not a premise for a show. If you're going to do a Lazarus show, you are adapting what we have done and you're expanding on what we have done. You are not doing. It would be like doing Game of Thrones as as the springboard for Westeros and a Westeros show versus going, no, we are following the novels as far as we can.
Right.
And then when we get to a point where we can't follow the novels, we will extrapolate out for better or for worse, but that's what we're going to do. Right.
Right.
Lazarus is not a setting. You option something like Stumptown, you're optioning the characters, not the stories. You are optioning the right to tell stories about a woman named Dexedrine Callisto Perios. That's what you're doing.
Right.
And you are taking with that certain truths. She's a private eye. She's a walking trash fire and other stuff.
And I say this with like all love and respect. You're buying an updated version of like the Rockford Files.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Which is great, fantastic, fun.
Yeah. I knew what I made. So.
Bex in the chat wants to know if there was an option of doing the Old Guard as a movie versus a series, and if not, do you have a preference for what could have been?
I actually think it's really well suited to movie. There was never any discussion that I was aware of that was like, oh, maybe we could do it as a TV show. Skydance acquired it with an intention of making a movie. Netflix came aboard with an intention of making a movie. And in success, God knows what'll happen. Mm-hmm. So who knows? There might be an Old Guard TV show in 10 years. Who can say?
Well, if Skydance is this happy with you, if the fates are kind, you will get that 4th Trek script. That someday. And then I will grab onto your coattails like no one has ever grabbed on before.
There's an errand stuck to me.
I just bring him his coffee and whiskey. I don't care.
We're a ways away from that, buddy. But it's nice to dream.
Mm-hmm.
Kane wants to know if you got to touch the axe.
I got to carry it around. There were something like 4 hero versions, and they were heavy. There were several stunt versions, and then there were multiple effects versions, and also for the swords, for Nikki's sword and for Joe's sword, where they basically build the weapon and then do the blades at different lengths and cut them off and have tracking marks on them. So in a lot of the combat, what Charlize is actually swinging is like this much labris. so that the rest of the labors can be added digitally, so she doesn't accidentally kill a stunt performer.
Right.
I got to watch her filming the fight in the church, and amongst the many things that one can say about Charlize Theron, and you can say driven, disciplined, really whip smart. And she is, and you know, Academy Award winner Charlize Theron began her career as a model. You know, she is 6 foot all the way, you know, with legs that are most of the way and willowy and of a type that you look at and from a distance you go, well, I mean, she's beautiful and she's clearly fit, but is she? Oh, no, she could also snap you into like a twig.
Right.
Like she is amazing, and I adore her. And just so focused and so disciplined, and to watch her do these things and again and again and again, right? If you're a stunt performer, you only have to die, you know, it takes you 3 takes, you get it, and then it's Ed's turn to die.
Long as the camera angle was good.
Right.
With the stunt performer.
But Charlize is required to kill them in every shot. So, you know, it's and that was, you know, you're in this church in the middle of the English countryside at 2 a.m, because it's a night sequence and it's summer, which means it didn't get dark until 10:30. And it's going to be dawn by 4:30. You know, the sun will be up at 4:30. And there is this woman who everything is, you know, if she can't go, it doesn't go. And she was always ready to go. Yeah. It was amazing. I mean, it really is. My respect for her is enormous. In much the same way my respect for Gina is enormous. It's just, you know, to take on these things in acting and producing and directing and all of these things, you are carrying so much for so many people. Well,
there's
it
also
is something else.
The pressure that was put on Gina, whether it was implied or not, is that as a rule in Hollywood, any person of color, but especially a woman doing a comic movie or an action movie, they basically have to knock it out of the park every time, or no one's going to give them a second chance, which is bullshit. And
if she was ever working with that as a conscious concern, she did a great job of masking it.
That's what I say. She just did the work, and she did great work.
She did the job.
Yeah, her directing is just fantastic in that film.
Yep, absolutely.
To where I'm like, okay, I want her to do more regardless, but it's like, no, I want to see her do more action like that. Yeah. You know, and I also remember watching it in terms of Charlize and thinking, oh, look, you're finally getting the action franchise you always wanted. It didn't happen with Aeon Flux.
Yeah.
It didn't happen with Atomic Blonde. It could have happened with Mad Max, but they're going for a prequel, and it's not going to be her.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know, and she was very.
I don't know if she wants to work on that team again.
I think she likes the character.
Yeah, that was a hard movie, from what I understand.
Yeah, I was gonna say earlier, I'm like, well, based on what I know about the experience that she had on Mad Max, she is obviously a consummate professional.
Yeah, unquestionably so. But that's a level of professionalism that was everywhere. I mean, it really was. You know, and when you're on the set for a feature film, you know, there are 150 odd people running around, everybody doing their job, everybody having to do their job in a timely fashion, precisely, expertly, and then move on to the next thing. And it breaks down if people don't.
Right.
And I am just the logistical nightmare of making a movie. You know, it's almost incomprehensibly hard. So
I've worked on a couple of major features and a lot of independent short films, which is why to this day I stay for all the credits. No matter how shitty that movie might be, I know how much work went into that thing. Yeah. Like, it's just, They're so hard to make.
Yeah,
Without question. Even the worst movie you ever saw was one of the most difficult times for somebody. Probably more so, to be honest.
That's exact. Like I say, I no longer ask how could they make such a bad movie. I ask how did they manage to make the movie at all. There is no reason a feature film should ever exist. I mean, really, it is the most absurd act of willing something into creation than you can imagine.
There is no industry that tilts at windmills more than filmmaking.
Yeah, it's just insane.
Didn't start out that way, but
are you worried that you've been completely spoiled by this?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'm ruined now.
Right.
And it's going to change. And I'm going to have ego about it now too. I'm going to walk around saying things like, "Don't you know I wrote The Old Guard?"
There's going to be some poor.
You were due. You've been too fucking nice for so long, Greg.
Exactly.
I think it's your turn to
just it was time to justify me being a prick. So here we
should
go.
now refer to you as Mrs. Ross from now on.
Yes.
And PAs will carry signs that say "Do not look Mr. Rucka in the eye."
Exactly. I yeah.
He likes a shot of Jura in his coffee every morning. Don't mess it up.
Trailer full of purple teddy bears. Anywhere you go.
Exactly. And they must be. That's not purple. That's lavender. Oh. I meant purple.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Rucka.
It has. It's absolutely spoiled me. And I know how lucky I am. And honestly, if this is the only one I get to be a part of, it's a pretty good one to be able to say, well, I did that.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
There are worse things. There are far worse things. And when you think about it, man, when I sat down, and I'm gonna have to wrap up soon, but I sat down at this desk in this office, and I wrote that first script, and it had been percolating, I guess, for a year and a half in my head. And I think Pop had just died, or it might have been just before he passed. And I remember just sitting down to write it and being like, I'm just gonna write this, and I'm just gonna have fun with it. And I knew Leo was going to draw it. He and I had been talking about it since 2014. And I had notes going back to 2013 and ideas going back to 1997, but I just wrote it. I wrote it to try to have fun with it. And it wasn't until I was most of the way through that I kind of realized this is what I'm really writing about. Like, I keep trying to trick myself into, oh, ha, 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 it's goofy. Because, see, they can't die. It's like dropping Wile E. Coyote into a canyon over and over again. They bounce, and then realizing that, no, I was trying to figure out why people had to die, why my dad had to die. And to then go from that to the book coming out in 2017 to the movie, being greenlit in late 2018 with Gina, and then the casting, and then they're shooting it in 2019. And this time last year, I think I had just gotten back from England. I think I'd been back from England for like a day or two. And here it is, and it's out.
Right.
It's in the world. And all these people are seeing it. And they're seeing it all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Netflix is in something like 130 countries, I mean, that's crazy.
It's got to be a good feeling. I mean,
I guess it is. I'm trying not to look at it too closely.
Like, I think I texted you this. That's probably not going to help. But like, I remember I saw your daughter's Instagram story,
Yeah.
It was just a picture of the movie poster, and she just wrote, "My dad wrote this." Yeah. I was like, "Oh man!" Like that one got me, and it's that one got me when I read that one. Out of all the posts, seeing her.
Well, I will say that I've been given the greatest credit I will ever get with my daughter. When Lin-Manuel Miranda tweets that he likes the movie.
Because she's a theater nerd, so yeah.
Oh my God. And it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. I freaked out,
Well, he said his account is now an Old Guard Stan account.
Stan account, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll see if he sticks with it, but
Who knows? He's going to need an action franchise someday.
Okay, there you go. Well, maybe we got a place for him in the second one.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Action musical?
Yeah, why not?
Oh man, that'd be fun actually.
I'd
watch a well-crafted action musical.
You bet it. Well, it brings a whole new level to rap battle. There you go.
So I know we do have to wrap up here. Anything coming on the horizon you can talk about that's coming out?
Black Magic's back.
Woohoo!
Should be dropping soon, and still trucking away on Lazarus, and Justin and I are working on a new Stumptown that we're going to do actually as an OGN. I've got some other things that I'm working on, and there's some things in development, but I can't announce yet. There are at least 2, if not 3 separate comic book things that are on the rise, shall we say. So,
and I know we talked about this before Old Guard came out, so we're going to have to make you like a monthly guest now.
Oh, yes?
Because before Old Guard came out, one of the things you promised you would do for us is after Old Guard came out, and I don't know why you decided on that day, you were going to talk about how you personally, if we're put in charge of DC, how you would fix DC Comics.
I actually said that?
You did. Look at Cable's smile. He remembers.
Probably was going to be set fire to the building, but
you said how I would change DC Comics.
Yeah, I can do that, but we'll do that next time.
Yeah, next time. There's no time right now. Next time.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, none of my solutions are easy.
Right. Yeah. The best ones aren't.
The good ones aren't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's always great having you on.
It is always great to be on, and you guys know that, and it's lovely to see you guys.
Yeah.
Even though Denise never looks at us.
So, what do you mean? I'm
looking runs
at
the
you
chat.
No, you got to keep an eye on the screen so you're not looking at the camera.
Oh,
right?
Look at you here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your faces, and I'm looking at the chat, and I'm like Google, lightning Googling so that I can have an informed response.
Yeah, no, you are hard at work. I get it.
We do have one last question before we sign off, and it was from
the
chat.
All right.
Norm from Texas wants to know how he can be in part 2.
He wants to be cast as an extra.
Yeah. He has to get shot in the face.
I can't answer that because I don't know anything about the production. When we get closer to production time, Norm, I'll let you know.
It needs a barbecue scene. That's where Norm comes in.
Okay. I guess. All right. We'll do a sequence in Texas. How about that?
There you go, Norm. Greg, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Guys, be safe and well and healthy and love your loved ones.
Always, yeah.
Will do.
Next week, we're going to have Joe Illidge on. He's going to chat with us a little bit.
You're going to have Joe on?
We are going to have Joe on, yeah.
Joe is awesome.
Joe's great. I'm so excited to talk with him.
I love Joe.
He was on Black Tribbles last week, so we're going to have him on next week. It'll be cool.
He is awesome. I love Joe. So, yeah.
Yeah, Joe's a good guy. Super pumped to have him on.
Give him great big virtual hugs from me.
I will, of course.
All right.
And with that being said, I'm Aaron Duran.
I'm Bean Rita.
And I'm Cable Hashitani.
I was Greg.
That's right. And we will talk to everybody next week.
Peace out. Yo.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Ted Wheeler, you must resign. That's how we end the show now, by the way.
I do not disagree.
There you go. Good night, everybody. Okay, recording has stopped, but just FYI, we are